In just 3 short weeks, we'll get to dive into the next big single-player RPG. From the creators of Fallout and developer of Fallout New Vegas, The Outer Worlds is shaping up to be what a lot of people wanted from Fallout 76. I spent the last week digging through every article, interview, and preview for The Outer Worlds to find 101 things you need to know about the game. So let's dive in. First off, what is The Outer Worlds? It's a sci-fi single-player RPG. You play it in first person, there's a lot of dialogue, decision-making, building your character through the items that you loot and skill points that you choose. It's essentially the spiritual successor to New Vegas, but different in many ways. This game is set in our universe, but it's a little bit different version because the Earth exists, but we're in a society ruled entirely by corporations. Earth is the domain of massive and powerful companies who are starting to spread across the stars to claim land and in turn make more money. Similar to Fallout, this universe takes place in an alternate history timeline. And the split happened around the time of Einstein in the First World War, when classism and capitalism ruled, and that really never changed. The Outer Worlds takes place in Halcyon, which is a star system purchased by 10 corporations who banded together calling themselves the Board. Their goal is to create a utopian society where capitalism is at the core of day-to-day life. Your character comes in the second wave of colonists shipped out to Halcyon, and the intention here was for these people to work menial jobs such as janitors and waiters at restaurants. The second ship is called the Hope, and something went wrong in interstellar travel. The story begins right when you arrive in Halcyon. The Outer Worlds is not an open world RPG like Fallout or The Witcher. If you can see it, you can't necessarily go to it, but it does have a bunch of distinct locations strung together which are handcrafted and reward player exploration. You can expect to travel across wide open spaces with 3 or 4 different distinct cities per planet to explore, and then of course you can walk between these, take the long way, or you can fly between them with the fast travel system. While a lot of people will want to compare this game to Fallout New Vegas, Obsidian has stressed that the scale is very different. Several large areas are within each planet, but it's more like KOTOR 2 as opposed to a massive open world. The game takes place primarily across 2 planets, but there are many other areas like moons, dwarf planets, asteroids, and space stations for us to explore. But the 2 planets you'll spend the majority of your time on are Terra 1 and Terra 2, and each of them have their own distinct, unique flavor, feel, and of course story. Terra 1, which is now known as Monarch, is a place where the Board tried to terraform, but that process ended up horribly wrong. So the alien creatures there are massive, and groups are rebelling against the Board because of how this planet turned out. Terra 2, however, is more stable. It's under Board control, so colonists there accept their roles, but control is slowly slipping away. Major cities include Edgewater, Roseway, and Byzantium. Now, Edgewater is a crumbling industrial town, while Byzantium is the closed, gated-off community where the upper-class workers thrive, and anyone lower class is essentially not even allowed in. In the Outer Worlds, you get your own ship that you can use to fast travel between key locations, and you'll need to get pass keys to access landing pads to unlock fast travel in each major area. You can't literally fly your ship, and you also can't upgrade it, but you can go inside and explore and talk to your companions who will be hanging around when you visit your ship. So it's very similar to a Mass Effect game in that sense. You'll also have a captain's quarters, and different parts of the ship will evolve as the story goes on based on the decisions that you make and the actions that occur and the consequences that follow. In terms of length, this game is not hundreds of hours long. Early estimates from the developers on the length is 15 to 40 hours per playthrough. For example, the starting area could take anywhere from 45 minutes to get through or 4 hours, all depending on how you play. There was a huge focus for Obsidian put on the world building and the society of the Outer Worlds, and it's really a dark satire on capitalism, which is reflected in almost everything in this game. It's been described as Firefly meets Fallout meets Mass Effect. So the dark tone and humor feels very Fallout, but having a ship with companions and the sci-fi element feels very Firefly and Mass Effect. Corporate bureaucracy is a recurring theme in the game, but players shouldn't feel bogged down, just reminded of it pretty much at all times. Companies have ads plastered everywhere, and almost every item you come across has an associated brand attached to it. The colonists believe unemployed people are monsters, and there's even a religion founded by the board to keep people in line and serving the corporations. Some NPCs will even promote the company they work for in conversation because they believe in it so much. Instead of seeing employee rights signs, there are employer rights signs everywhere. People support companies like they support sports teams, which reflects on their extreme loyalty and how entrenched they are in this society. There's no racism or sexism in this universe, but there is plenty of classism and tribalism. It's a lot of us versus them, and you'll see that between the competing factions in this game. The Outer Worlds has plenty of social commentary, but it's designed as a backdrop for storytelling and not trying to be deeply profound or make a social stance. It's just there as a mechanic to drive forward character development and stories. The creators describe the game as dark humor. It has a dark tone, but it's not fun to play a constantly sad game. And if a game is all silly or all dark, it usually ends up being boring. So the Outer Worlds is both. Getting the tone right was very important to them, having layers of humor and darkness. But there is no comedy in the game for the sake of telling jokes. There's always context to the world, so the humor doesn't undermine the believability of what's happening within the Outer Worlds universe. There is an overall tone arc that evolves over the course of the game. It's going to start out a little more silly, but then it's going to get darker as you start to learn things and as the storyline progresses. As the player, you can choose to do a dumb playthrough where you specifically build your character to be dumb, and a lot of the humor goes into the dumb dialogue options. In a dumb playthrough, the player is situationally unaware, socially inept, doesn't understand certain words, and also pretends to know something and understand what's going on, but in reality really doesn't. If you decide to go that route, companions will call you out for the things that you say and the decisions that you make. Also, there is one companion that is dumb themselves, so they will probably not notice. Obsidian describes this game as a choice-driven RPG where your decisions carry narrative weight. They want players to play the game their way. That's why there's no voiced protagonist, because the creators want people to see their character as an extension of themselves. So we're going to see lots of branching dialogue options, and that's also why the game is only in first person. You can't switch to third person view in this game. Choices that you make in the Outer Worlds are not the typical good versus evil option. Instead, you have two choices which cause separate outcomes, and the goal there is to have players choose decisions that they care about. What people perceive as the evil decision might end up having a better outcome or save more lives in the end. It just depends on the specific scenario. Throughout the course of the Outer Worlds, you're gonna have to make some really serious decisions, some life or death, some deciding the fate of many people. There's a lot of cause and effect, and sometimes there are no good choices. There's never one single path in a mission in this game. There's always multiple ways to accomplish your goals depending on how you want to do that. Obsidian wants players to be able to form a consistent vision of their character through the choices that they're making, whether that's being noble, nice, mean, smart, dumb, or murderous. You should be able to do that consistently throughout the game. Player choice is the focus, but the game doesn't branch so much that you'll have completely divergent playthroughs. All players will confront the same scenarios, albeit from different contexts. Only one NPC cannot be killed due to the story, which means everything and everyone else can be killed if you want to. And alternatively, you can be pacifist. You will have to kill some robots, but in terms of humans, you do not have to kill anyone. In terms of combat, The Outer Worlds is a first-person shooter with melee and stealth mechanics. There's a tactical time dilation ability that allows you to slow down time and aim at specific body parts, which is very similar to VATS. Targeting and hitting specific body parts will affect enemies in different ways and can be used as a tactile decision, such as shooting enemies in the head to blind them or shooting enemies in the legs to cripple them. Tactical time dilation, or TTD, was designed for players that aren't used to first-person shooters, but so that it's still satisfying for people that are. And from my experience, it lands in terms of feel between Fallout 3 and Fallout 4. Sometimes you can talk your way out of combat by passing dialogue skill checks. For example, if your lie skill is high enough, you can successfully lie about something to avoid combat. Your character has an inhaler which you can use to heal or equip consumables to give buffs in combat. This inhaler can be upgraded to increase the number of consumable slots as well. Combat in the Outer Worlds is defined by player choice. There are no classes to choose from because your playstyle is defined by the skill points you choose, the perks you go with, and the weapons that you equip. So spending skill points and choosing perks, it's very similar to Fallout in that respect. You can choose to go for a min-max stat build for hyper specialization, but you could also do a generalist playthrough, a jack-of-all-trades build. Anything works in this game. There are many different playstyles in the game, including stealth, ranged, melee, persuasion, and leadership. Obsidian wanted to allow for hybrid playstyles, for those who want to focus in stealth and persuasion at the same time to avoid as much conflict as possible. Just one example. Leadership is a unique playstyle that lets you use companions to shape your gameplay. For example, you can be a generalist and be kind of good at everything, but bring a stealth companion to a mission which buffs your own stealth. So that's super flexible there. You can swap those companions in and out as needed. Speaking of, there are companions in the Outer Worlds, and you can bring 2 along at a time or choose to bring none and play solo just by yourself. You will meet and recruit these companions at different parts of the game. Each one has a unique personality, but all of them are outcasts like you, and it makes sense within the narrative that they join you. They will comment on the world, interact with each other, and also have opinions on your decisions. So far, there are 6 companions in the game. They're going to level up along with you and have their own perks that you can choose from to customize. Companions also share their inventory space with you, so that means your personal inventory space will expand when you have them in your team. You can choose which weapons your companions use in combat, and each companion has a special move with a cooldown. For example, one of them has a special dropkick attack that will knock down enemies. Your companions may decide to leave and go back to the ship if you make decisions that they don't agree with. So you can persuade them to stay depending on your dialogue skills, but they won't completely abandon you unless you decide to kick them out. So it's your decision in the end. Each companion has a loyalty quest, very similar to loyalty missions in Mass Effect. So completing a companion mission will buff that companion's combat ability. There are several different factions that you can side with throughout the game, including the board itself, and that's kind of viewed as an evil option there. So choosing a faction in any situation has narrative consequences that you will feel the weight of. And along with factions is a reputation system, and many decisions that you make will either increase or decrease your standing with a faction, again very similar to Fallout. So killing guards in Byzantium, for example, will decrease your reputation with the board. Let's talk about stats. There are 6 different attributes split among 3 categories. Body attributes are strength and dexterity, mind attributes are intelligence and perception, and then personality is charm and temperament. Your skills dictate how high or low these attributes can be. So these can range from being very high in intelligence, for example, or below average, depending on what you choose. Every time you level up in the Outer Worlds, you'll get to spend 10 skill points. There are 18 individual skills which are divided into 7 categories, and those categories are melee, range, defense, dialogue, stealth, tech, and leadership. Each skill has threshold bonuses which unlock something special to enhance the skill once you reach a certain point. So, for example, investing 20 points into the block skill will unlock a perfect block ability that acts sort of like a parry for melee combat. Some skills will unlock optional methods of completing missions via skill checks. For example, you can hack a terminal and turn robots against each other if you have the required level of engineering skill. There are a few ways you can get extra skill points. For example, your companions can buff you via the leadership skill, or you can equip certain items, weapons, and armor that will increase your skill level as well. That's very similar to Fallout. In addition to skills and skill points, you also have perks and perk points, and every 2 levels you'll get to spend a new perk point. There are a total of 48 different perks spread across 3 different tiers. The first tier is available from the start, and then tier 2 requires that you have 5 perks unlocked already, and then the final tier 3 perks require 10 perks unlocked. Perks range from character buffs like increasing your carry capacity, to dialogue bonuses like better prices at vendors, and combat abilities like increasing your movement speed during tactical time dilation. There's another layer to this character system called flaws, and this was created so players don't feel like gods like they usually do at the end of RPGs. The game tracks everything that happens to you and will trigger flaws at certain points when you reach them. So if you get killed by robots, 20 times, for example, you'll develop a robophobia and suffer a penalty when fighting robots. Players can choose to take that flaw to hurt their character in exchange for a perk point. So it's definitely a give and take. You'll have to adjust your playthrough appropriately. And this is completely optional, so if you don't like this system, you can reject the flaw entirely. There will be around 24 flaws in the game that can affect you through the course of your playthrough, and depending on your difficulty, you can take 3 flaws on normal or up to 5 on the supernova difficulty. If you end up not liking your character or the skills that you specialized in, you can respec your character's skill points to change up your build, but it doesn't remove the flaws. Those are permanent to that character. Diving into weapons, there are 5 different weapon types in the game. You've got one-handed melee, two-handed melee, long guns, handguns, and heavy weapons. Beyond just bullet damage, some weapons have special damage types, including plasma damage and N-ray damage. And then you have some elemental options as well, including fire, corrosive, or shock damage. We have a special weapon type called science weapons, and these are completely unique, unlike anything else in the game, and they break all of the rules that everything else has to follow. And these were inspired, we learned from the developers, by bugs that they ran into and decide, hey, let's go ahead and turn these into weapons. It's been confirmed that there will be 1 science weapon for each weapon type on launch. So the shrink ray will be the handgun, the mandibular rearranger will be the quick melee weapon, the one-handed. There's a levitation looking gun that might be the heavy weapon, and then there's like a fire spitting gun as well. Science weapons are also unique because how good you are with them is dictated by your science skill, and not something like your handgun skill for the shrink ray. So this allows you to specialize in science weapons across the board without having to spend points in a specific weapon type to be more effective with that weapon. Some weapons have mod slots that allow you to customize them via a workbench, and some of these can be modded to add a special damage type like corrosive if you need to melt through armor. There is item durability in this game, so depending on how much you use certain items or how durable they are, they will break and have to either be replaced or repaired. Weapons come in different brands, which offers a lot of variety in the way they work. So Spacer's Choice has low durability but is cheap and easy to fix, while something like Hammersmith has a ton of mod slots so that you can customize it. There is a character creator in the game, but it's not super robust. There are different head presets and sliders to refine how your character looks. 20% of the team working on the Outer Worlds at Obsidian also worked on Fallout New Vegas back in 2010, so there will be some inspirations there. As the player, you can holster your weapons if you'd like to. Just like there's no Pip-Boy, there is no radio that you can tune to that plays music, so nothing like that from Fallout. There is a day and night cycle in the game. No matter where you are, you're going to notice that days and nights shift and the environments will change accordingly. There are no microtransactions in the Outer Worlds and no plans to add them in the future. There's no New Game Plus right now, but it is a possibility in the future for Obsidian to add with an update. They're also open to officially supporting mods sometime after shipping the game, but it will be moddable similar to the way that New Vegas was, just not in an official capacity. You can read emails and snoop in on people on their computers very similar to the way you can with terminals in Fallout. There are several different difficulty levels, ranging from story, which is going to be the easiest and the lightest on combat, to Supernova, which is going to be the hardest. If you're playing on Supernova, the hardest difficulty, your companions can die permanently in combat. However, if you're playing on anything else, they'll just be knocked unconscious if they go down and automatically revive after combat. There is no romance in the Outer Worlds, not with companions or not with any other NPC. That was something that Obsidian thought took time to get right, but they had other priorities, so they decided not to do it. Your companions cannot blow your stealth, which is really nice because that's hard to pull off right. They will not be disrupting your sneaking. There are no traditional boss fights in the Outer Worlds. Some enemies will have special moves and they'll be unique, but nothing like a massive boss encounter that's going to really change the way you play the game. There are no mini games for hacking a computer or lockpicking a lock. They each require a skill check and specific items to do, and it takes a few seconds, but that can be improved with skill points. You can take Lone Wanderer type perks that gives you a bonus while you have no companions with you if you decide that's what you want to do on your playthrough. This game was made with multiple playthroughs in mind, so the creators expect people to want to go through and make different decisions, different impactful things in order to get different outcomes across multiple plays. You can make one catastrophic decision towards the end of the game if you're on a dumb playthrough, and it's a huge mistake, and apparently it's the worst possible outcome. There is no morality or karma system in this game. You are not judged for the actions that you take, but your companions, however, definitely will judge you. Obsidian is open to creating DLC for the future, and they're also interested in making a sequel, but for right now, they're focused on the launch of this game first. Any object that you can interact with will be outlined in the world, and there's even a perk to extend the distance from which these objects are highlighted. There are restricted areas in the game, but you can use disguises and pass certain dialogue skill checks in order to go inside. That was 101 things you need to know about the Outer Worlds. All of the information would not be possible without sources, so big thanks to each of them. I've listed everything in the description below. If you want to learn more about the Outer Worlds, I'm working on preview videos leading up to launch, and I plan to cover the game when it releases on October 25th, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss a thing. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.